Well, thank you very much, Michael. We now have 15 minutes allocated for a Q&A. If you wish, you might want to put your questions in the chat. That way we'll have a minimum of background noise. Wendy has some questions here. So Wendy, do you want to unmute and ask a question in person, or would you rather put it in the chat? She's wondering why you chose all of your examples from kind of the. Hi, Wendy. From the
I had to figure
canon.
out how to do the. Yeah, well, that was just my wonder, because with the way culture is now in today's community of learners, we have so many different cultures that we have to ascribe to. And so I understand that uh, I'm going to guess that you teach literature, and
Do.
that's what your background is. I'm also a instructor of literature as well, and so uh, and when I do, I understand a literary canon is pretty much predominantly ran by or male white males and some women, but in today's community of learners, we have so many different diverse uh, people. And I understand the idea of language is a political place, because we, going into the workforce and all that, we base people's knowledge and education. We value them if they are literate and speak well and all that. And literature does provide that language. But how do you deal with the fact that we have so many other students who are not from that culture?
Yeah, my current 350 students are enormously diverse. Let me show you something. As part of an answer to this, let me show you something that's actually from this same presentation. This is what I typically, are you able to see where it says concerns?
Yes.
All right. I do actually address that. I'm sure you've seen this acronym. That the idea is that literature comes from dead white European males.
Yes.
And what I think is that isn't true. It appears to be true, probably because of the way school systems select literature or something like that. But if you actually look at the power writers that have made major contributions to world literature, it is an enormously diverse group. It includes men and women. It includes, people, very diverse, groups of people. And so that's one thing. It's if you wanted proof that human genius is universal, one of the best proofs you could ask for is a simple list of books of genius. And let me move forward a little bit. There's just nothing to it to move through and find, power literature written by women, written by African Americans, written by, Toni Morrison. Beautiful Nobel Prize acceptance speech, by the way. Sometimes people don't know that Dumas was Black. Some of the best books I've ever read, Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison. One of my favorite books, The Autobiography of Malcolm X. And of course, Frederick Douglass. And I have 4 etchings of Frederick Douglass outside that door. Another question that comes up is it elitist? Is it elitist? And again, what I would say is a simple question. Were most great writers aristocrats? or did they articulate aristocratic values? And again, I think when you actually go through the most powerful works of literature that I know of, the answer is no. It just sort of depends what you're looking at the moment. But the great books are not primarily written from an aristocratic point of view or an upper class point of view, or a socially limited point of view, but they're written by everyone, and they articulate the views of everyone. The narrative of Frederick Douglass, we read that in one of my classes. I have a class where we read Walden, and we read the narrative of Frederick Douglass, and we read the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. It's American literature. And if I had my way, everyone would read this book. But what I would say to you is, I certainly understand. I'm tempted to say perfectly understand, but I probably shouldn't put it that way. I welcome the question. I mean, that's
my reason for saying that is because as I sat through your presentation, you did a lot, you obviously, you didn't put any of the African Americans or people of color in your presentation. So that was the reason why I challenged that is all,
Yeah, I understand.
And so now you obviously knew that was going to happen possibly. So you had your backup with all the Black authors that are accepted into the literary canon.
Well, I did show this slide.
Okay, I must have been trying to go on into it because I had difficulties getting into the introduction but I apologize if I didn't see those. But yeah, I know that language is politics, and that's kind of what I do. I'm a deconstruction critic, so that's kind of my little thing. But yeah, the whole Shakespeare thing, I teach Shakespeare all kinds of ways because of the audience and trying to get students. So when you have some teachers who are not giving them actually the play itself, I have two feelings about it. One is that it was not meant to be read, it was meant to be seen. And so I sort of try to draw in my students by doing a whole lot of different things because kids are reluctant to read Shakespeare. And I've had graphic novels. I've had that for students who were students of color who were reluctant because they felt like it didn't represent them. And so for them to see that and then go away from that and look at the real language, so you have to sort of, but the bottom line is you really don't have a lot of time that they give you. And they really, you restrict your ability to teach the full text.
Yeah. Do you have another minute for me?
Sure.
Can I ask you this? Do you teach Othello?
Oh yeah. I actually, I've taught Othello. I taught Othello when I was a student teacher. Well, I attempted to, and the teacher who was assigned to it had to do that, and I thought it was a wonderful thing. But I have to say that it was taken away as fast as it was given to me because the teacher did not like the fact that I was African American in her classroom as a student teacher, and I knew Othello because my background was in Shakespeare. And she was a new teacher and she was intimidated and so would not let me come back into her classroom when I made a simple statement that, about Morocco and so forth. So yeah, and I thought it was a very positive experience until I
teach Othello. I'm teaching a Shakespeare class as well right now. And we read Hamlet, we read Othello, now we're doing King Lear. And I wonder if you had the same reaction that I have. I had a long talk with my students when we were beginning Othello about what were we to think, because there certainly are elements of racism in the play.
Oh
But
yeah.
the question is the play itself racist, or does the play itself condemn racism? And I wonder what your reaction was. And
I,
let me not be coy about it. My reaction was that the play condemns racism.
I think that it opens up the question of racism. I
Okay.
think that it puts it out there because Shakespeare he liked to do that kind of stuff. He liked to uh, open up situations and let us interpret how we feel about it. I mean, he was a crafter of that skill, which is why he was able to walk away from each of his stages and still keep his head. Because if he, he had a rhythm. He knew that he would put those questions out there, but he also knew how to walk away from them because of the queen. And
Yeah.
so he got away with it. He was her court justice, if I can say it that way. And so,
Yeah.
but he was able to get away
Well,
with
I'm
it.
really glad glad that you brought those questions up. It's important for us to talk about them. And, you know,
Yeah, thanks.
anybody else? Does anybody else have a question?
I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. It's from Diney Medlock. Diney, would you like to unmute and ask the question? She's concerned about having her child read classics that involve violent or depressing situations.
Hi. Okay. You were close. It's Danae. My parents were very creative in the 70s. So yeah, my daughter's been reading for a really long time. And one thing that's come up again and again, and I feel we haven't drawn the line on most things, but she accelerated so fast that it got to the point that she would get to certain books and then I would not know how to address the questions that she had with them. So like in kindergarten, she read a book that had words that talked about child labor laws and affairs and things that I didn't want to talk about, but we still had to address. And she's very sensitive, very smart. The world, she wants to be able to, she doesn't understand why things are so complicated, like why people can't be kind.
Right.
And so I'm really worried because she wants to read all of these things and I'm not letting her because of two things: extreme violence in some, because I haven't read everything, and because of adult content that she's not gone through puberty yet. And I don't feel safe having her look at that. So
how old is she?
she's 8 now.
Okay. Let me tell you what my experience has been on this question. With eight teaching 8 English courses, I teach a lot of different books, and they, some of them do have violence. In some cases, extreme violence. Yeah. And I've had a number of kids who were concerned. The kids were concerned about it, and their mom was concerned about it. It's always the mom. And what I did was to say, do some reading, do a little bit of reading, and look at a plot summary or something of this book, and then you have a talk together. And trust the child's feelings. In White Fang, Call of the Wild was one where that kept coming up. I've taught, out of the 1,000 or so kids I've taught in the past 3 or 4 years, it was I may have had 3 or 4 kids who were concerned about reading Call of the Wild. Hello, Molly. I see you, Molly. I may have had 3 students who were concerned about it, and their mom was concerned. And what I ask them to do is to talk it over together. And then if they want to, give it a shot. And what eventually happened with my kids in every case, was that they eventually decided to give it a try. But, you know, I mean, certainly initially, none of those kids wanted to read a scene where other dogs tear a dog to pieces and devour the dog and so forth. And they were concerned about it. But in the end, what happened was the child would say, I think I want to try it, Mom. I think I want to try it. And as long as if I get over my head, we'll just stop. Is that okay? And in every case, the reaction afterwards was, I'm so glad I read this. I'm so glad I read this. So that's what I think is the safest course. The safest course is the two of you huddle up and think it through and do a little bit of reading in advance and get a feeling for it. You know, dogs are killed in this story. Dogs are, you know, they fight in this story. They're wounded. And see if you think you can do it. And I don't know about most, in so many books, there's at least one scene somewhere where there's an issue of some kind.
Yeah.
You know, like one of the issues that can come up can be racism, for example.
Oh yes, we've discussed that.
Yeah, and so my view of that is that it's not unhealthy for us to see that racism exists in the world.
Yeah.
You know, and literature shows us what it was like, and literature allows us to respond in a positive way by identifying the evil of racism. You know, but that's what I recommend, and in my experience, that has always been the right thing to do.
Now, I'm going to tell you. Here's a confession I have. She's ready. I'm not. She's been ready for a while, and I'm scared. What would you tell a parent on how to do that? Because she's so.
In quite a few cases, they take turns. I've had a lot of cases where the mom and the daughter took turns.
Okay.
And she would read the chapter, and then she'd give it to you, and then you'd read the chapter, and then you'd talk together.
May I please say
and
something?
then she'd read the next chapter, and then you'd read it. So.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Yana, and my son is a teenager now, but we went through exactly what Danae is going through. At the age of, 5, 6, 7, my son, he was reading books. They had this thing where they wanted to read all the Harry Potter books.
Yeah.
And I thought, these are just, they're too maturely themed for kids that age. I'm lucky enough to have a cousin who is a librarian, and so I tapped into her. And also, we were lucky enough to have a first and second grade teacher who had a master's degree, and also his wife had a doctorate in teaching young children literature. I mean, it was just perfect references. And they both said, one, who chooses the book? Is it the mother or is it the child? So that was a thing. It wasn't like I was telling him, like, oh, read all, however many there are, 7 or 8 Harry Potter books. It was something that he was interested in. But the more important thing I thought was, at that age, their imagination, their limited experience only takes them so far. And so it wasn't like when he read these certain passages, it wasn't like when he read certain sections in the book that it took him to the horrific place that I could imagine. His imagination only took him as far as his maturity and his experience and his exposures were able to. And hands down, the kids that were interested in, again, the Harry Potter books at a very young age, when they got to the one where Hermione and everybody, they start having this bickering, this pre-adolescent bickering, they all dropped them because that was not interesting to them anymore. They didn't have that frame of reference. But he read White Fang and Call of the Wild and all of those, and they led to good discussions, but I do not regret letting him read them because it didn't disturb him in the same way as if he had seen the movie. He was able to process it intellectually.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, because a part of me feels really guilty that before the pandemic, we kind of banned her from going to the library and grabbing books herself because we were getting scared. She was grabbing really very, very challenging and very, not necessarily the topic, but very adult things that I wasn't looking. She looks like a little kid to me, and I have to remember that her brain is in a different place. But still, I think maybe maturity wise, she might still be a little kid. So I don't want to do something that I'm trying to balance she's, 8 years old now, with the fact that this material, her brain really wants to read it, but what are the fears of like a 7 and 8 year old? Like they always say the fear is that your parents, something's going to happen to them or whatever. And she already has since she was very little, a lot of anxiety and gets overwhelmed because she seems to understand so much that it's a lot when you're a kid. So I will try to give her the opportunity to look at more books, and I will try to sit down with her and do that. I guess that question was really mostly, it's okay to do that, and it's nice to know that worked for you. I didn't want to scar my child, because I'm just letting her out there in the wild to read anything, and that's what she wants to do. That's what she wants to do more than anything. So
that may eliminate some of her anxieties, is to,
So can I make a suggestion? Our time has elapsed.
Oh, sorry.
We have to have a business meeting. It's required by state law. Can I suggest we do have a chat period scheduled for after, at the end of the conference? We have an open forum scheduled at 12 o'clock. And I would love it if we brought some of that discussion there.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be cool. May I interject something, please?
Sure.
I need to say hello to Molly. Molly Wallace is who I remember. Now, Molly, who are these people, Molly?
Hello, Mr. Thompson. Francis, is this working? Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we do hear you.
These are my middle children, so Simon and Francis. And I have an older who's in German class right now and a younger who's running around.
Well, I have been teaching for 275 years, and your mother is one of the finest scholars I have ever met. She wrote some of the finest research papers I have ever read. I still, dare I tell you, I still show images of some of your papers in some of my presentations. So it's an honor to see you, Molly. What a treat for you to come to this session.
You too.
Yay.
I use your curriculum with all of my children, and that's why they're here listening too, because they said,
Yay.
We have to meet Mr. Thompson. So,
what a treat. What a treat.
great.
And I know Senora would love to have a chance to see you as well. So, all right. So Margaret,
Michael, thank you. This is the end of the keynote. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. You obviously have sparked a lot of thought and discussion for our participants, and I hope we will be able to continue talking OTAG, Judy and I have been discussing maybe having some more literature themed events by Zoom during the course of the year, so we can keep thinking about this theme.
Yay. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Bye, Molly.